In this new series, we will be taking a look at all of the different train operating companies, or TOCs as they are otherwise known, and put them under the spotlight by taking you through their history, services, routes and depot locations. For episode 1, I have chosen South Western Railway to kickstart this series. South Western Railway runs under the joint ownership of First Group, which owns a 70% share, and MTR Corporation, which owns the other 30%. The latter is based over in Hong Kong, whilst First Group have their base up in Aberdeen. South Western Railway, which can also be abbreviated to just SWR, operate commuter services running from London down to the southwest of the country. You will also find that SWR operates Suburban Services in Surrey, Hampshire and Dorset, as well as regional services in Devon, Somerset, Berkshire and Wiltshire. The franchise manages 187 railway stations across its network, which is fairly broad. They also average around 1,700 trains per day, which call at around 200 stations, leaving only 13 that are not under South Western Railway management. So now let's talk about the route map in more detail, which can be broken down into different subsections. First of all, let's look into South Western Railway's mainline services. The services are run on 4 mainline routes. The first one is the South West Main Line, which runs between London Waterloo, which is the company's only London terminus station, and the town of Weymouth. This route passes through several main calling points, including Woking, Basingstoke, Winchester, Southampton, Bournemouth and Poole. These services are split between express, semi-fast and stopping services. The second mainline route is the Portsmouth Direct Line, which follows the same route as the previous one until after Woking, when it branches off to then call at places like Guildford, Haslemere and Petersfield before running all the way down to the 2 stations in Portsmouth. Next is the West of England line, which branches off down at Basingstoke and runs on the lines to Exeter, Andover, Salisbury and Yeovil. Uniquely, however, this is the only mainline route which is not fully electrified and is only operated by South Western Railway Services. Lastly, we also have the Alton line, which is the shortest of the 4. Some, however, do consider this line to be classed as a suburban route. However, for ticketing purpose, it is classified as a mainline route. It is worth noting that the South Western Railway operates 14 mainline train services per hour departing out of London Waterloo. When it gets to the peak periods, these numbers do increase, however. The next group of services we will look into are its suburban services. These are all run between Waterloo and Clapham Junction, where they split into 2 separate groups, via Putney and via Wimbledon, which run at 12 and 16 trains per hour in off-peak periods. Via Putney refers to different routes, with the main one being the Waterloo to Reading line. The Via to Putney route also includes branch lines such as the Staines to Windsor, Chertsey and Ascot to Guildford lines. The second grouping, via Wimbledon, on the other hand, uses the slow lines of the 4-track South West Main Line between Waterloo and Woking. It also has branch lines, and these include such as Chessington, Hampton Court and Shepperton branches. The last grouping of services refers to trains that do not call or start and terminate at London Waterloo. These routes include the following: Ascot to Guildford line, the West Coastway line between Portsmouth and Southampton, Eastleigh to Romsey, Wessex and Lymington lines, and lastly, the Island line down on the Isle of Wight. Like all train operating companies, their contracts include promised improvements, and South Western Railway was no different. They promised things like refurbished trains, Wi-Fi on all stations and trains, and investment into their stations. In terms of the focus of services, they promised journeys up to 10 minutes faster from Southampton, Bournemouth and Exeter heading into London, and 29 additional weekday services between Portsmouth and Southampton, with a further 35 additional weekday and Saturday services between Portsmouth and Waterloo. This was important for South Western Railway to keep, as there were growing concerns over the franchise's performance from the government. with a severe rise in delays and cancellations because of what they had under the performance review. This was initiated by the Transport Secretary, and since then the improvements have been met and South Western Railway were taken off the review. Now let's turn our attention over to the South Western Railway's fleet of trains and have a look at them in more detail. The current fleet of 158, 159, 444, 450, 455, 458, 484, 781 and 707 classes operate on different areas of South Western Railway's network. For example, services on the West of England line will use the 158, 159 diesel multiple units because, as mentioned earlier, that line is not fully electrified. Suburban lines are where you will predominantly find Class 455 services running and Class 458s on the Windsor and Reading lines. The most recently introduced class into the South Western fleet is the Class 701, and this has a very frustrating story for South Western because they were ordered in 2017 and was due to enter service in mid-2019. The order consisted of 60 10-car and 30 5-car trains at a cost of £895 million. The plan behind their units was to increase suburban capacity into Waterloo by 46% and replace the 455, 456 and 707 units. However, due to a lengthy delay, the first 701 didn't enter service until 9th of January 2024, making it nearly 5 years late. Hopefully now we will start to see the benefit behind the Class 701s being introduced. Probably the most prominent amongst the fleet is the Class 444, which can be mainly seen along either the South West Main Line or Portsmouth Direct Line. In early 2021, South Western Railway announced that they will be keeping 28 Class 458 units and will all be refurbished and reconfigured into 4-carriage long units to be used on the Portsmouth line. However, in 2024, they dropped the Portsmouth plan after the hard work of being refurbished and that had been completed. So far, we have talked about South Western Railway's routes, services and train fleet. So let's now take a look at the depot locations for South Western Railway. In total, there are 9 depots and stabling sidings for servicing and maintaining the South Western Railway fleet. Those locations are Bournemouth, Farnham, Feltham, Fratton, Northam, which is just north of Southampton Central Station, Ryde, which solely takes care of the Class 484 units, and then you have Salisbury, Strawberry Hill and Wimbledon. You will find that most depots can be found very close, if not next to, their namesake stations. Now let's turn our attention into the franchise history of things. As a consequence of British Rail's privatisation, the railways were split into various franchises, one of which being the South Western franchise. And in 1995, it was announced that Scottish Transport Group Stagecoach had been awarded the contract to operate the franchise, which was then known as South West Trains. Operations started on the 4th of February 1996, with the first train under the new franchise being the 0510 service from Twickenham to London Waterloo. Interestingly, this service was the first privatised scheduled train to operate for 48 years. It wasn't until 2017 that Stagecoach and South West Trains were no longer a part of the South Western franchise, and it then became South Western Railway under the new ownership of First Group and MTR, which we touched on at the start of this video. The current franchise contract is expected to run until at least May 2025, so within the next year or so, we will find out one of two things. Will South Western Railway extend its current contract, or will it be awarded to a completely new ownership model? I suppose only time will tell, but it won't be surprising if we do see South Western Railway maintain their current branding. So, that pretty much covers the whole of South Western Railway's franchise, and I hope you have enjoyed the start of this new series and found it very informative. If you have liked this video, however, please could you give a like and press the subscribe button if you feel that you want to see more railway content from me. Your time and support is very much appreciated. Please also feel free to leave a comment with feedback or with suggestions on which train operating company you would like me to cover next. So I'm Stephen, and this has been Down the Lines, TOCs in the Spotlight.